everybody. Erica Howe here with the WPW Virtual Leadership Summit. I am really excited to tell you about this wonderful woman that I'm going to be interviewing today, Dr. Elsie Howe. She is a former CMIO, a regional medical officer, and a medical director who grew 3 surgical practices from scratch and then became the first in the New York City tri-state area to start a newly FDA-approved breakthrough procedure and has joined a new startup vascular surgery practice with a former CEO partner to help save patients from amputation from peripheral artery disease. Her initial failures and steep learning curve as a leader in medicine really motivated her to create Lead Physician to fill some of the major gaps that we have in learning that make a good physician into a great physician, one who can reach higher and uncover their true potential as leaders in medicine. So I am so excited to have you here with me today, Elsie. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, it's so honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
You know, it's funny, I was doing a little bit of research to prepare for this interview, and I'm really excited to talk to you because I think you're absolutely right. We are not trained to be leaders in medicine. We're simply trained to be clinicians. And in doing a little bit of research last night, I actually came across a New England Journal of Medicine article from November 2020, so really recently published. And it showed that over the last 35 years, from 1979 to 2013, women physicians were less likely to be promoted to the rank of associate or full professor when compared to their male counterparts. Now, that part's not really surprising. I think we could all, piece that one together, but that there has been no narrowing of that leadership curve or gap over time. That has actually been the same since the late 1970s. And that part is incredibly disturbing to me. Now, I recognize that we have a lot of headway to make when it comes to gaining those leadership positions. And really, as women physicians, we're behind the curve, and there are a lot of things kind of working against us that we need to improve upon, and skills that we need to obtain along the way so that we can put our best foot forward when we go up for those leadership positions. And we do rise to associate professor, full professor, or honestly, in private practice, become a really excellent practice partner. So as we get started today, do you mind just taking a minute? You mentioned some of these initial failures, and I think we can all relate to those. Would you take a second to share with us some of those initial failures and how and why you ended up starting Lead Physician?
Right. So I actually never even thought I'd ever be a coach or, have an organization to myself. But I've made so many mistakes in the past, and I'm like, why does everyone have to go through what I went through? And I know it's happening everywhere. So my failure was, there's many of them, but the biggest one that I can remember was just being a new medical director 2 years out of fellowship.
Wow.
And not really knowing what the heck I was doing. And seeing these employees who are in my office, and I'm thinking, how do I do this? I don't even know. So I just did what I knew how to do, which was give orders, and I just told people what to do. I didn't really listen to what people had to say. I just said, this is my way or the highway. And one of the regional operating officers came up to me and says, you can't have a scrub tech because blah, blah, blah. I'm like, how dare you tell me I can't have a scrub tech? And then I went to my mentor, and he let her have it and says, when you go to medical school and you've gotten your training, then you can come here and tell Dr. Coe whether or not she needs a scrub tech. And I'm like, whoa, wow, he's really strong. He's really brave. And she ended up in the hospital with SVT.
Oh my God.
So that's the leadership that I learned. And then I knew that I made some of my employees cry. I've seen them, and I would apologize, and I would feel bad. And I said, listen, don't take it so seriously. This is just because I was afraid of the patient, and blah, blah, blah. Next thing I know, one of the few Christmases later, we're on a party bus going to New York City, and everyone's drinking. We're having cocktails. It's like fun, and music's playing, and we're on this, huge party bus with poles, down the middle, there's like big poles, and we're giving speeches, and my center manager stands up and says, Elsie, do you know that you made each and every one of these people on this bus cry at one point in their time with you? And I'm like, haha, very funny, whatever, Yeah. But I'm looking around and nobody was laughing. No one, people weren't even looking at me, they felt really uncomfortable. So that was like a slap in the face, because I
Wow.
was like, holy crap, I'm like that nice kid who grew up in West Virginia with conservative Korean parents who could do no harm and like did everything my parents said. I'm that person who's like nice to everyone and I made everyone cry. Like, what is wrong with me?
Right.
What the heck is wrong? What am I doing? And that began my journey of like, okay, self-discovery, and I got to change. And I
Right.
started reading books. I started listening to DVDs in my car to and from work. I remember listening to Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I made a decision that I'm going to change, that this is not right. And slowly but surely, that's how things started to happen. I was like, you know what, people started listening. My employee turnover started to go away. Like, people wanted to stay with me. I started listening. I started applying things that I was learning. I got mentored. I got coached. And then, I started believing in myself more. I think people who aren't great leaders don't really believe in themselves. There's some insecurity too. That's why I kind of reacted more than responded to people. And then I started having a vision and goal. So when I say, the title of this conversation is "What got you here is not going to get you there," it's, you got to completely have a different change in your mindset that we don't learn as physicians.
Right.
We just learn to do this. We're in our lane. We don't realize that there's a whole freaking world out there of what we can do. And then I started, applying, okay, well, I learned this from this mentor, and I have this vision, and I'm going to believe it. And I'm going to have an office 8 minutes or close to my house within 10 minutes. I'm tired of this 50-minute commute. So I'd say that every day, I believe that I'm going to have an office close to my house. I believe, and I kept saying it. Next thing I know, my husband calls me and he goes, I got to move out of this office. We still have 4 years on the lease, but I want to buy this house to put my office in. And I don't know what to do. And I'm like, I know what to do. That could be my office. That could be my office. And so I called my CEO and I said, hey, Ray, can we put another interventional radiology office in this center? Blah, blah. He said, oh, and I said, it's perfect because it has, the 2-room OR, and I can like have this number. It's small, but maybe you can make it work. And he said, okay, Elsie, I'll take a look at it. We'll just take a look. I'm like, great. He didn't say no. So a few weeks go by, nothing happens. And I'm still believing, right? I'm still saying that statement. I have a goal, I have a vision, and I'm working towards it. And I call him up again. I said, Ray, I'm just following up with you. And he's, oh, yeah. I forgot. Usually you think, oh, he doesn't want to do it. All these thoughts in your head going, but I kept at it. And because of my persistence, he went to go check it out. And he says, let's do it. So next thing I know, I find another partner to take over my office. I grew another office next door. And then this is a third office. So I moved to that office 8 minutes from my house.
Perfect.
And I grew a whole new like varicose vein treatment, in addition to dialysis work there. Then I outgrew that practice and I built another practice. So I'm saying, like, I'm like one of the few women in this practice. Okay. There was actually the only medical director out of 70 some centers. And if I can do it, and I'm here to empower you women out there to do the same thing, it starts with in here. Yeah. If you don't have it in here, you're never going to go out there, right? And we don't learn that stuff. We don't learn these things. That seems so elusive because it's not very scientifically based. Sure. But there's science to it.
Well, yeah, and that's the funny thing too. We think like, oh, there's no data behind that, but there actually is. There's a lot of psychology data.
Yes.
And there's a lot around the strategies that work for becoming a leader, how to interact with people, how to manage people, how to communicate, how to negotiate. And it's just not what we're used to, but yeah. You start digging and you really uncover some of the things that feel right and the things that feel wrong. You can actually start to find data behind it. And okay, this is why. That makes sense. That makes sense that, when I was kind of barking orders at people, and when people don't feel heard, they get defensive and they shut down and they're less likely to accept new ideas and new brainstorms. And then there's data around that. And so if I can ask them questions and get buy-in, they're more likely to accept my plan and my ideas and they feel more invested in what I'm having to say. So, and then they go on and they translate that to other people. So a lot of this leadership, the leadership strategies that you teach, I know revolve around good science and good data. It's just not stuff that we are taught.
Yeah. And, they say that 80% of New Year's resolutions fail, right? Why do they fail? Number one is fear. And because we're totally outside of our comfort zone, if we're at a certain level in our life, and all we know, all the habits that we've built and all the experiences and our attitude is based on like a certain level, we can't even imagine being at this level, like it's a whole new world. And there's a lot of fear because it's so unknown. There's so many unknowns, and we're so used to having knowns,
Yeah.
right? We're so used to having the facts and figures and our ducks in a row. We have to learn to dream, be creative, because we're creative beings. A lot of physicians have this humongous creative side,
Yes.
like even artistic side that, I'm seeing on social media that really they say it's not a mistake. It's actually, why we went to medicine, because we're that type of person. And we don't cultivate it.
Right.
And we don't start moving. And the fear is, how do we get over that fear? That's important. We have to learn to get new habits. And because the same habits, what is that quote that I forget, one of the mentors said, the same, doing the same thing, Albert Einstein.
Mm-hmm. And expecting a different result.
Exactly.
Definition of insanity. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you start learning, okay, I'm going to stop thinking in this way. I'm going to build these new habits, and I have this dream and I have this goal, and all the excuses that happen in your head, like, I can't do it, I'm not good enough. I've never done that before. Nobody in my family's done that before. Who do I think I am? All that imposter syndrome stuff. We got to really work on ourselves. And and I still have that. It's human nature.
Well, we all have it.
But what's different about me compared to some other people is that I work on myself. I hear it, and then I say, okay, I hear it, and I'm not taking it. And I say, I'm more than that. I immediately get out of it. Do you know what I'm saying?
And I love that quote that you just gave. We need new thoughts and new habits to make a new dream a reality. So, it's exactly what you said. You can't do the same thing and expect a different result. So start trying to do something new. And I think many of us who have started a new business before or a new venture, I know when I started the WPW conference, I was looking around like, does everybody think I'm insane? Like, this is crazy.
I know what you feel like too, because I go through this building new position.
Like, nobody's taught me how to do this. And like, I'm just going to put on a big CME conference. I'm sure it'll be fine. Like, and I mean, I used to turn to my husband and I'm like, I think I'm crazy. Am I crazy? And he's like, I'm excited, but it also takes setting some of that voice inside you that says, maybe you shouldn't, the shoulds. Put the shoulds away and just take the action, take the steps necessary to move in the next direction of where you want to go. And a little bit each day can add up to a lot. I mean, there's 365 days in a year. 365 small steps can equal miles and miles,
Yep. And I love what I learned from study is, when you write down those 3 things that you're going to do today to move myself in the direction of my dream, and you write it not just as a to-do thing, write it as a results thing. So instead of saying, I need to do this, I need to call Dr. Maddox because I want to schedule an interview, you're gonna write the result. I'm interviewing Dr. Maddox. And when you write it like that, it's like something changes within you to really start believing in what you're doing. And when you do that and you create small wins, it's like, wow, you start feeling it like biologically, and you like that you're really moving forward, and you're starting. Sometimes, do you ever step back and say, whoa, I created this? Wow, how did this happen?
It's funny because in the very beginning, I had a like a journal, but it was literally, I felt like I was doing all these things to try to move the conference forward, and I didn't feel like I was getting very far. But you'd have a few people register and a few people comment on it, and started a Facebook group that was small, and all of these things. In the beginning, everything is small. And so I started writing down just data, just things each week that had happened. Like, I had a meeting with this person agreed to be a speaker, I talked to the hotel, and we're going to do this, just to remind myself that I was moving forward, even though it felt like very small steps along the way.
Yes,
And it's so funny because I look back on that book and I'm like, gosh, I should keep a book like that and a daily log forever, because it looks small when you're doing it that day or that week or that month, but I tell you what, it adds up. A little bit of action every day adds up to big results. And now I look at the conference and I'm like, it's so exciting to see, see the response and see how many people it's touched, and to get to meet so many great women.
So good. So good.
You mentioned, what are you mentioned these kind of 3 steps to success and making success happen. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah. So number 1 is really, if you're not happy in your job, or maybe you are and you feel like you're stuck, or maybe you feel like there's more to this, even though you may be happy with it, you need to start thinking, and we don't really do this, is we need to create a goal. Okay, it's like a vision or a mission statement, but a goal, a big goal, not just a to-do list goal, or not just something that would create a sidestep for you to something that you could do already, or not just, when I ask people, what are your goals? They're like, well, I really want to get my MBA, or I want to look into creating this side gig, or I want to be better invested, or that's not the goal I'm talking about. I'm talking about a dream, passionate goal that would really get you excited about life. It would help people in the same time. And it's not something you've ever done before. And it actually incites fear in you. You almost want to throw up because, and you don't want to share it with anyone, because part of you has that imposter syndrome. You're like, if you share it with someone, they're going to laugh at me. It's like when you started WPW.
I love that. Yeah. Make the goal big.
It's like WPW is big. And you probably, before you even started it, you probably didn't want to share it with everyone because you were like, I don't know if I could really do this.
I'd run into women in the hallway at work and I would tell them about it, but I'd be like, come here.
Exactly. That's how you know that's the right goal.
Yeah. And then I would ask them if they thought I was crazy. I'd be like, I'm going to do this thing. What do you think? And do you think I'm crazy? And like, literally that was what I asked.
And what do people say?
They're like, no. Oh my God, that's fantastic. I'm
exactly.
And they're like, send me the website. I'm like, oh, okay. So,
but I do tell people, be careful who you share it with.
Right.
Because there are definitely going to be naysayers. There's definitely going to be people who don't want you to succeed and be above them. And, they think you're above them, and it's threatening to them. So there's definitely, you should keep a lot of it to yourself and really just to your trusted friends. But then you write it down on a goal card. So I have a goal card that I carry with me. I have it all around my house, even like in my desk. I have copies of it, of things that I've written about my goal, that I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm CEO, lead physician, blah, blah, blah. And then I even have it on my bedside. So you're going to always remember that is my goal. Because there's a guy, do you know the 4-minute miler, the sub 4-minute miler?
No.
Roger Bannister. He was a medical student at the time in 1954. He was the first man ever to run a mile in under 4 minutes. Okay, the first time ever. And all the experts said it can't be humanly done. It's impossible. And he was so close that, I was like, I can do this. I'm a medical student. There's no reason. So he wrote a goal card, and he put it in his shoe.
Oh.
And he would run, and he would visualize. That's another thing. You got to visualize your goal. In so many ways you can do that. You can visualize it. You can write it on. I have a voice. We all have voice recorders on our phone. I write, and this sounds crazy. Okay, a lot of this sounds crazy, but you record a message to yourself of who you are and what you believe as if it's already happened. This whole goal, my vision has happened, and I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm sitting in my house. This is my dream home. I can see the ocean. My boat's docked out there. But you actually, all the details of what it's like. Anyways, he did this. I was like, he believes he's running, and he can visualize a sub 4-minute mile. He actually wrote down 3 minutes and 58 seconds. And next thing you know, he was the first one to do it. 3 minutes and 59 seconds and milliseconds. And then that's not the most amazing thing. The most amazing thing is after he did it, I think 20,000 people have run sub 4-minute miles. So can you imagine what we're capable of, that because of our mindset, we don't allow it?
Yeah, it really speaks to the growth mindset and moving away from a fixed mindset and really focusing on, failure is a chance to learn. It's a chance to grow, that it's really all about progress, not perfection, and just moving the needle a little bit every single day.
Right.
It all adds up.
So the other thing I would say, so we already talked about taking action. That's definitely one of them. But once you make a decision to do this, this is the other thing I want you to do, is work on your self-image. And one of the quickest ways that I tell people to do it, and what I've learned from my mentors, is I want you to write down get a sheet of paper, fold it in half, write down on one column all the things that you think about yourself. Okay, good or bad, whatever. I can procrastinate. I'm fat. I don't know if I'm good enough for this. I want to do this, but all the thoughts about that goal of why you think or you can or cannot achieve it. On the opposite side, anything that's negative, I want you to write the exact opposite. Okay, those are what we call paradigms. Paradigms is just a group of habits that really formulate our self-image. If your self-image is not aligned with your goal, you'll never get to it, because fear will always hold you back. Okay, and all that doubt and fear will not allow you to move in that direction. So when you write down everything the opposite, when it's negative, I believe that I can achieve this. I am healthy, and I know I have the capabilities of doing it. So if I say I don't have the financial means, I do have the financial means. I'm not going to make any money from this. I'm going to be wealthy from this gig. And then I want you to rip it in half. Okay, and actually want you to shred and burn all your negative stuff, and then even say to you, just say goodbye to that old self. And I want you to read that new self-image every single day. Every single day, start believing and reading, and even write down your new self-image. I have a friend who started writing her self-image every day for 30 days, and her business just skyrocketed. Okay, it's what we believe inside that makes us better leaders. Like I said, it takes me back to the time when I made everyone cry. I was insecure. Even though I seemed like I was confident because I was telling everyone what to do,
right.
Really inside, I really didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That came from.
And when you're confident in yourself, it's not that you're egotistical. Your ego is strong, but you're not egotistical. You're so much more self-aware, and you're so much better as a leader because you know where you stand, and there's so much more to leadership, but this is the foundation.
Yeah, well, and I agree. I think it's when you feel confident, that's not arrogance, it's not ego, that almost kind of settles you in a way where you can then be focused on serving others and how you're going to come together with someone else to help meet their needs and yours. It just comes from a different place than the one that's from insecurity, where it's very ego driven and it's ego protective. And so it's a very defensive response. Yep. So I love that.
There was a really good show on the Discover Channel last week.
Yeah.
It's called Undercover Billionaire.
Oh, yes.
Did you watch that?
I've watched it before. It's really good.
Oh my God. So that just reminds me of what a great leader is. And he couldn't be that way if he wasn't grounded in himself and self-confident and have that image of who he was already. But then he just to tell people who haven't watched this, it's about a man who went undercover. He's a self-made billionaire. He moved to Erie, Pennsylvania for 90 days, and he had this goal of creating $1 million business in 90 days, starting with a $100 bill. So he literally was living in his truck because he couldn't afford any housing. And he decided to buy some beads, and it was Irish Fest or something. And he made money from selling like all these trinkets. And then he took that money and he bought like old used cars, and then he spruced them up and he sold them for thousands, and he used that money to buy a foreclosed house, and then he rebuilt that house so he had money to build a restaurant that had served craft beer, and it wasn't his craft beer. He went to the restaurant over and said, "Can I sell your craft beer, and can you create mine? And then I want to get barbecue." And he found all these random people that are on Craigslist or whatever. And he sat them down and told them the vision of and mission of what he's trying to do, got them all excited about it. He didn't pay them. He didn't pay them and said, "I promise to pay you." Can you imagine? And then he built this, he had this restaurant. He won this award, like the first place award for the county of Erie on this barbecue fest that he just found out about. And next thing you know, he had a restaurant, and a valuator came in and valued it at $750,000. And because
Oh,
he didn't make the 1 million mark, he put his own $1 million into it.
oh my God.
That was a beautiful story, but I mean, it just
Okay.
shows like how you can start from scratch, and all the
Yeah.
mindset that he had, there were setbacks. There was all these setbacks in the film, like you could watch, like, you know, it was raining and pouring on the day when he was supposed to be trying to sell us all this business so that he can make money to pay his house, and like all these things happened. Like there was some termites or something mold in his house, and he had to stop for 5 days, and he had to rebuild that area. It's amazing. So it's like our life story in 90 days.
I love that. Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
I am putting that documentary in the show notes. I'm finding it because that sounds amazing. But it's so true. It's not that any of us that start businesses or do something crazy, it's not that I never had any failures. I mean, I had plenty of failures. I had plenty of things that went wrong that nobody saw.
Nobody saw, nobody talks about, right?
I mean, an example, last year, the conference, I ordered a bunch of swag for the conference from China. And in the midst of a pandemic, you're not going to get your stuff. And I literally, like a week and a half before I'm supposed to leave the country to go host this conference, I am trying to get, 200 lanyards and notebooks and all of this stuff branded, and and it was crazy, and nobody sees that, but there's 1,000 different stories like that of ways in which you just have to pivot and just figure out, all right, well, what's a new way that I'm going to do this now? And, and the pandemic, of course, in general has been like that for all of us. Okay.
Yeah,
So let me
and
make sure.
and the reason why you pivoted and the reason why you persisted is because you had that vision in the center of your focus,
Right.
and you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
So that's why you didn't give up.
Oh,
that's why it's so important to pick the right goal.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so funny because I remember when I was initially starting WPW, and I would ask the crazy question to my husband, and then he would be like, well, okay, so, let's play out the worst case scenario. He's like, what if only your 15 friends from work sign up? I was like, then we're going to have a blast. We're going to have a really
exactly. What a great attitude.
Yeah. And it's, and he's like, do you still feel like you need to do it if only 20 people sign up or 15 people sign up? I'm like, I do. I just really feel it in my soul that I'm here to do this, and that I need to continue it, whether it goes great the first time or the second time or not, or, I have failures, or I have to pivot a bunch, or, we have to cancel a live conference and put on a virtual summit. So it just speaks to when the goal, it feels right, and it feels like you're living your truth, then it makes it really easy to move forward. And it doesn't mean that it's always easy to do, but
yeah.
It feels like, it's not easy from day to day.
But I have to say, each time you do it, you start believing that this works, and you apply the same tools, and then you notice other successful people around you, and you hear the way they talk and the way they think. Yeah. It's the same. It's the same. That's how successful people make it. So every time I have a project or something big I want to do, like that breakthrough technology, I made a decision that I wanted to be the first one. We needed this for our business. We needed to help these patients in this way. I just so happenstance going to Paris with my family, and they said, I called a company and said, I would love to learn this and help you with this. And they said, well, can you go to Paris? I'm like, I'm going to Paris already. Why do you want me to go to Paris? And then there was a guy in Paris that I met to watch him do, he was one of the first in the whole world to do it. So I went to go and scrub in with him, and my husband was very nice to let me do it during vacation, but that's how it starts. It's just that vision and taking that little step forward. And even when I got mentored by Bob Proctor, I don't know if you know him, but you guys look him up. He's all over YouTube on how to succeed. But he's an 86-year-old gentleman who's been studying this for 59 years. And I decided to get mentored by him. And then I spoke to him on the phone. I'm like, I can't believe I'm speaking to Bob Proctor. And I was telling him my story and my job and situation. He's like, Elsie, I think you need to leave that job. And I'm like, yeah, I do. He goes, well, why don't you join me while you're figuring it out? Because, I think you can do this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do coaching. I'm not sure. So anyways, I decided to do it. I decided to go for it. And next thing you know, I made a decision that I wanted to really learn the stuff. So within months, I passed all, all the requirements that you're supposed to do. And then I became in this inner circle. So I was one of 15 people out of
Wow.
2,000 people to be in his inner circle. And I got to have private time with Bob Proctor. So I'm just saying, like, I'm not trying to brag. I'm not trying to impress you. I'm trying to impress upon you guys that you apply this technique and you make it your habit. It's like everything you do works. You do this and that works. I started investing and it's working. So as doctors and as women helping women, which I love what you're doing.
Yes.
That's how you make it happen.
Well, and that's absolutely true. I mean, like, I think when what you're doing can help serve you, but also serve someone else, when you're bringing other people up with you, it becomes easy. And I feel like you're aligning your goals with someone else's, and both people are rising at the same time. And it's the saying, empowered women empower women. Like, when you are comfortable and confident in where you are, it makes it really easy to then lift others up with you, and that's really, it's funny. I don't know if you know this, but every year I get at least one guy who asks to talk at the conference. And I think it's so funny because I have created a women's conference by women for women. And it's really about giving a stage and a podium to women who have something really important to share with other women. And it doesn't mean that it's not important what a man has to say, but this is about putting the spotlight on women in a way that we don't often get, or we don't get as often as others. So I always think it's funny when I get the email, saying, like, I'd love to come talk at your conference. And I'm like, but you're a guy. And we don't do that. It's really, for me, about bringing other women up. And I think it is for you too, and making sure that they have a voice and that they have the skills that they need to really lead in a successful way. So you mentioned, sometimes people will get stuck. Why do people get stuck? Well, what is that about?
Mm-hmm. Well, they don't really realize, I think a lot of people start blaming things outside of themselves, their environment, and saying they're doing this to me, administrators are doing this to me, us doctors are in this place and they got to change it, otherwise I'm leaving, and or my husband did that to me, or why can't things ever work out for me. I've had a colleague say that, and we don't realize how much there's definitely life circumstances that we can't control, like COVID, right. But there's so much that we can control.
Right.
And when you learn how to empower yourself, no matter what the situation is out there, you can make it happen.
Yeah.
You can find a way around that obstacle.
I agree. I think that when I hear people saying, I'm stuck, there's no way for me to move forward, I have no choices, I guess my response is, in saying that, you're giving up your choices. You can own these choices for yourself. There's always another choice. It may not be the most pleasant one. It may not be the easiest one, but you always have a choice of how to move in a different direction, try something new, get creative, and take a step forward towards whatever your goal is. So when I hear people say, like, oh, that I'm stuck, I can't do anymore, it's the institution's fault, or my department or my chair doesn't treat me well, that's fine. That happens to all of us at times, but don't give all that power away, because you still have choices on how you can maneuver moving forward. And you just have to open your mind to seeing things that way, I think, and really changing.
I mean, there's definitely people who will be an obstacle in your life,
mm-hmm.
but you learn how to navigate around them, and you learn within yourself that the stories we create in our thoughts, because we have like 60,000 thoughts a day, and the things that we say to ourselves, I can't, already creates a mental block right there. Right. So learning, and you brought up a great point, learning how to say things is so important. Whatever words, I remember when I was at Bob Proctor's conference, and being with these elite consultants who I didn't feel like I belonged being with, because they've been there before and they're just way like, wow, I just couldn't believe how they think. But they say, Elsie, Are you listening to what you're saying right now? We're just at a restaurant. And I was like, well, I do this, but I can't do that. And I'm like, Elsie, don't say I can't. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I said that. I said that, didn't I? So really watch the words that you use. Really start paying attention to what you're saying about yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
And turn it around. Even though you some might feel like you're faking it, and fake it till you make it kind of thing. Even if you feel like that's not true, you keep saying it, and then you start believing, and then you start changing your habits, and you start attracting things to your life that you didn't before.
Right.
Yep.
Absolutely. Now, what do you feel like keeps successful people from becoming successful leaders? Because I think women in medicine, I mean, we're the top 1%. I mean, I'm not trying to brag. We really are, I mean, intelligence wise, success wise, hard work ethic, just so much. I mean, we're the complete package. What can I say? And, so I look at these amazing, successful women, but it's not the same to just be successful in general as it is to be a successful leader. There's a different skill set to do that. So, what keeps us from transitioning that way? How do we hold ourselves back?
First say, you know what, I'm not necessarily the expert in everything, because as physicians, and we come out there saying, well, I'm the expert, so right. You should listen to me. And that's who I was. And just say, you know what, I'm an expert in this, but maybe I don't really know all the answers. I'm going to be vulnerable here. I'm going to ask for help. Reach out and ask for help. And if you think coaching is weird, I think it's a lot more accepted these days, and even more so as time goes on. Find a coach for yourself. Start reading, start learning. It's ourselves. We're the biggest obstacles of our growth, and we don't even realize it.
Ooh, that's so good.
So if we just step back a little and say, you know what, what's the big picture here? Let me stop, and I don't really know because I see people saying like, I don't need to do that. I don't really, that doesn't really work, or I already did. I've met people who said I've gone as far as I can go, which is crazy, because most people only reach about 10% of their potential. That's what they say.
Well, and I love what you said. We are our biggest obstacle to our own growth, and that, it's okay to ask for help as you lead. Yes, I forget who else I was interviewing, but one of the other great interviews shared that it's okay to lead imperfectly, and you're not supposed to be perfect at it as you do it. It's also an opportunity for growth and learning, but you can ask for help along the way, and you can get guidance, and you can gain strategies. And so I love that we shouldn't be holding ourselves back and waiting to be perfect before we lead. You're right. As women physicians, and just as physicians in general, a lot of what we do is, people die if we're not perfect, if we don't do, just the absolute standard of care sometimes. So you have to kind of change your mindset when it comes to being a leader, to saying, I'm going to do the best I can. You did the best you can with what you knew to do at the time. And then you realize that that wasn't serving you or anyone else. And you started to learn and grow more. And I love that concept. What does Maya Angelou say? When you know more, when you know better, you do better. And I love that. It's a skill like anything else, and we can learn it just like anything else.
And you know what? I think specific to women is we tend to be more perfectionists, because we're more empathic, and we look at our kids, and we look at our jobs, and we look at our patients. We spend more time with them. We feel for more of what our kids are demanding, and our husbands are like, they don't really need that. I'm not really going to get up out, I'm not going to get up in the middle of the night and get the milk. What are you talking about? Whatever. And you're like, oh my, he's hungry, and we have to get, and we feel it more. So we feel like we constantly do more, I think, than men. But so what we need to do is make sure when you're planning your day, and everyone has only 24 hours. So time management is really a misnomer. We can't manage time. We're managing our duties. And so when you're writing your must-dos, write down the top 3 things that I have to do today. Okay, so I create a trifold with my paper. And again, we all have our phones and calendars, but this is what I do. And I write down, these are the 3 things that I have to do today, no matter what. The second page will be what I can do if when I have time. I really need to get to these. Like, but I forgive myself if I don't get to those. I forgive myself, and it's okay. So, but I need to do these 3 things. So that's how I know I get moving, because those are the most important things. And usually I try to do the hardest things first, because in general, we try to procrastinate and leave that to be the last, and then it doesn't happen. So, and then I also, I organize my calendar to make sure it gets done. That's how you start really making it happen.
Making progress each day. I love
Yeah,
that.
forgiving yourself for not doing those other things, because you will get to it.
Right.
Yeah.
That can be the must do 2 days from now. The other things can rise up
Yeah.
as you knock those others off.
Yeah.
Now, so looking back, if you could give yourself a couple pieces of advice back to your younger self, as you were starting to lead, what would they be? What would you say to that younger you?
God, I would say, Elsie, go and find a coach now. Because I didn't even know. There was so much that I didn't know that we really should be learning in medical school and residency, which is why I'm kind of trying to help with that right now, and to help that. I met somebody who's working with the AMA right now, to help change the medical school education. But
love that.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously I would learn about how do I improve my self-image? How do I become a better leader? How do I communicate better with people? How do I gain, it's all about gaining trust. And we do that, women do that so much better than we are. Our EQ, IQ is much higher, I think, than men. And we can, the way you gain trust with your employees, it's just the way you and I talk with one another and how we make friends.
Yeah.
Because and we need to lower our egos and stop putting ourselves in this box that everyone's put. It's not necessarily our fault, it's just the way that the whole system works. It's made us, doctor, I cannot call you Elsie, sorry, I don't do that. And so then you start thinking of yourself that way, but instead think of yourself more as a servant leader who's serving, but you're serving the system and you're serving people to make things happen. And it doesn't mean that you're groveling. Doesn't mean that you're putting yourself lower. No, you're still the leader, but you're serving a purpose, and you're at their level. And you start thinking in that way, that all humans are the same, and that no matter what level you are, and you're the scrub tech and I'm the doctor, I don't care. We're both human. We're both spiritual beings having a human experience. And when you start thinking that way, everything changes in your life.
It's funny because a fair amount of the time I give talks on negotiation and how to negotiate. And one of the first things that I say to do is, when you walk in the door to have a difficult conversation, a difficult negotiation, before you even sit down, you're going to make small talk. And that is probably going to be one of the most important things that you do to set the tone for that negotiation. And we know, studies have shown, there's data behind this, that when you make small talk, you're showing interest in the other person, and you're humanizing yourself and showing that you guys are on equal footing, that you're not above them and they're not above you. When someone sees you as being above them, they tend to get defensive and put up walls and be less likely to brainstorm. So when we can break down some of those walls and show that we are all in this together and we're really on equal footing, that you can actually have a more productive conversation with them. They're more likely to meet you halfway and brainstorm with you, buy into your ideas, and come up with a solution with you. And so I tell people all the time, one of the most important things you're going to do is ask them how their ski trip was. Ask them how their kids are doing. Remind them that you're human and they're human, and that we're not two big bad monsters that are fighting,
Yeah. I want to give you another example. I was just thinking about this yesterday. I was watching this junior physician who's working in my practice. He's 3 months out of fellowship, and 3 months out of fellowship. And I'm in a new practice, and I'm training to do a lot of these new procedures. And at the end, I will stay till the very end while the other attendings left to go dictate, and I will help them clean up that patient. I will throw away all the needles and all the blood and everything, and help move that patient out. And the staff, over time, they're like, Elsie, we've never had a doctor help us the way you're helping us. And I'm like, listen, I don't have any other duties. Why shouldn't I help you do this? And I think they respect me more for that, because I'm, it's not because I'm above this, but I'm watching that younger doctor just, get his scrubs out and run out the door. And I don't know what he's doing. He has no responsibility. He's not even supposed to be there. He's not even credentialed to be there. And I'm ready to have that conversation with him. I just haven't had a chance.
Good. That's perfect. We've gone for almost an hour.
I'm sorry.
No, and I love it. If you don't mind, I'm going to ask you just a couple more questions. I'm sorry that, I've promised everyone that these were going to be 30-minute conversations, but this is just too good. I love talking to you, and you're giving us such great information and knowledge, and really, this is just so important. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go a couple more minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so one more question. How can we, once we rise up those ranks of being a leader, how do we start to bring others up with us? How can we make sure that it's not just us rising up those ranks, but, especially as women in medicine, the leaders as women are too few and far between. So how do we start to bring others up with us and support that?
Yeah, so now that we're much more aware, and you're helping, I think, so many women become aware, Erica, and what you're doing, I think we have to be intentional about, like, it's your job to find people who are junior to you, to cultivate them. So not only you should be developing yourself, but succession planning, or thinking ahead and saying, you know what, I want to really be intentional about focusing this year. I'm going to help somebody. I'm going to help somebody get there. Even if it's just you're handing them a book and short, and you may be so short on time, but just even it's just short, brief conversations of what you've perceived about them and their abilities, and what steps they can take, can make an enormous difference. I mean, how many times do you talk to people and they say, this one moment changed my life forever?
Absolutely. Back to when I talk about negotiation, I say, it's really important to be taking on some of these difficult conversations and negotiations, even when they're not the most comfortable thing for us, because you really do not know who is silently watching you and who you are silently inspiring and motivating to take on their own difficult conversation themselves. So often when I would give these kind of negotiation talks early on, it was to smaller groups, and I would have women like 2 or 3 years later run into me in the hallway and say, you gave that talk, and I took notes, and 6 months later I went up for promotion, I went up for pay raise. And I was like, you did? I mean, you never said anything. Like, sometimes it can look like, you're kind of speaking into the wind, and like, who's really hearing you? But you really just don't know. And when you go to a negotiation table, or you have that negotiation with someone, and that's kind of in a protected space, but then you leave and you tell other people how it went and how it was successful, or what your wins were, or maybe even ways in which it didn't go well, but things that you learned from it. You don't know how that is kind of spreading like wildfire and inspiring other women to say, you know what, maybe it worked out for her, maybe it didn't, but she tried it. And because she tried to do that thing, I'm going to try it. I'm going to be brave in this moment and set my fear aside and really try to take my career to the next level and have that difficult conversation too. So there's so much behind motivating and inspiring women that goes beyond the moment that we're in talking to them. And we really just don't know how much we're affecting their lives, down the road. Another example, I had a woman from 2 years ago who reached out just recently and said that, and this was, this was very complimentary, but that going to the conference was really just so life-changing for her that she feels like it almost saved her life, because she was in such a dark place. And I know that there was a lot more to it than any 1 3-day conference can do. Although I'd like to say that WPW is that powerful. There's a lot more.
It is very powerful. Are you kidding?
Yeah. But it just, it was one of the, it's, you try to do something good, and you put some good out that you hope serves other people. Mm-hmm. But at the end of that, oftentimes you're touching many more people than you even realize. And so I love the concept of just being intentional with it and trying to educate and bring others up with you, because it may be that woman that you've reached out to, but it also may be 10 other women that she talked to after you talked to her. And so your reach can be much wider than even those few people that you may or may not have a bunch of time to spend with. But those little moments mean a lot.
You brought up Maya Angelou, and I want to say, Oprah brought up Maya Angelou's quote, and it was, like when she said, how does it feel to be in a room of white men? Because a lot of times she was in a meeting, it was always just her, and she was just her and white men in the room. And she would said, you know what? I would be there, I would sitting there, all these white men next to me, and I would say, I love it. I love it. And they're like, what? Why do you say I love it? She goes, yeah, because I think about what Maya Angelou said to me, and that is that I am not here by myself. I'm here because of the 10,000 other women who came here before me.
Oof.
I am not alone. And so when she has that mindset, and you're sitting there, and I've been in moments like that many, many times, because I started in IR when there was only 1% of women in IR. And I remember that. So it brings me such comfort to think in that way, that it's not just me. And if it weren't for all those other women fighting for my rights, that I wouldn't be here today. But I also think about the men who supported me.
Yes.
Because for me, there was very little women mentors. And first of all, it's only 1% of women. And there was definitely some men who worked against me, but there was definitely men who work for me. So I'm very grateful to them.
I agree with that 100%. I would say that I'm very grateful for the men who have supported the crazy idea I had for the conference when it was early on. Even though, they couldn't go and they couldn't benefit from it, they were there as another voice, just saying, like, it's something different, and it's a business, and yeah, you can do it, and don't hold yourself back from that. And I think we need as many of those voices as we possibly can. We shouldn't shut those out because that person is not the same gender that we are. There are many he for she's. There are many men that want to support women and want to see us rise.
And I also like to teach junior men, because I wanted them to realize that women are important too. So by teaching them and giving them leadership skills, and allowing them to be self-aware, it's empowering women too.
I agree. I will tell you just a quick story. I remember when I was rounding one day, there was a patient who, I was the only woman on the team, and I was the attending, and everyone else was male. And every time we would go in to see this patient, he would call me by my first name, which was on my jacket, and he would call everyone else doctor, even the medical students, which, okay, fine. And when I spoke, he wouldn't look at me. He would only look at the intern, and he would only respond to the intern. And so when we left after like the second day of this happening, I said, I just want to make you aware of something that you may not be noticing as a group of men standing here with me. And I just explained the situation from my side and said, I don't know if you've noticed that he doesn't call me doctor, he doesn't look me in the eye, and he won't respond to my questions. And so, I just want you to start to notice that. And it was so remarkable, because at the end of that conversation, no one had noticed it, and that's fine. But at the end of that conversation, from that point on, for the rest of the week that we rounded on that patient, the men that were rounding with me made a point of advocating for me. And certainly I could advocate for myself, but they made a point of reminding that patient that this is the attending, you should talk to her. And so I think there are a lot of men that want to support us.
So good. So good. And you know what? How brave is that? There's a lot of people who wouldn't be able to be brave enough to say that and bring it. It's just a matter of awareness.
It's just a matter of awareness. These were, but it was remarkable once I brought it to their attention, how supportive they wanted to be, and how much they wanted to stand up and
they don't even realize what women go through.
They didn't realize.
They have no idea.
Exactly. So
they're like, wait, you went through that? I don't understand. What do you mean you went through? I never experienced anything like that before.
I agree, but sometimes it just takes us voicing it. Okay, one more story, and then we're ending. I promise. I had a colleague that was a hospitalist. We graduated at the same time. We'd been doing it for nearly 20 years. And we would be on these group calls that we would do together because we were doing some work together. And he had always called me Erica, and I had always called him by his first name. And he stopped one day, and we were on group calls with the residents, and he stopped referring to me by my first name and started calling me Dr. Howe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like noticeable because we're very good friends. And so after a couple days of this, I said, hey, I noticed you stopped calling me by my first name. Like, you can call me by my first name. You don't have to be shy. And he's like, no, I just started learning that you guys don't always get called doctor. And that many times the woman that's on the call, even though she has the same degree I have, is not called doctor. And so somebody pointed this out to me on Twitter. I learned about it on social media.
Isn't that crazy?
And so now I'm making a concerted effort to make sure that when we're in a group, I always refer to you as doctor, so everyone knows we are equals. So it's, again,
that's important.
It just gets back to us, like there are people that want to advocate.
Bringing awareness to it. By the way, if you want to go into administrative role, or you want to be a medical device consultant, or you want to be a consultant to a company that has to do with pharmacy or whatever, one of the things that they talk about, the reason why they don't hire certain doctors is because of the fact that you want to be called a doctor. So I just want you to, that's a completely different story than about being in a room of doctors and someone's called Erica, right. And the other one's called Dr. Jones and he's a man, but I'm just saying that
when you get outside,
because we put ourselves on this pedestal and sure. It's like, I need to be called doctor. That's what kind of draws a lot of people, kind of turns people off.
Yeah.
Just saying. And that's something that I brought to my awareness when I was looking at other positions. So.
Right. Okay. I promise you, I'm going to talk to you forever.
Yeah.
You are just a wealth of knowledge, and I love it. And I think we think very much the same. So
yes, we do.
Thank you so much.
I can't wait to meet you in person someday.
Me too. Hopefully in Grand Cayman. How about that?
Yes. I've never been there, so I would love to.
Does that work? Oh, it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place. So Tell me, Dr. Coe, if someone wants to learn more about Lead Physician or about you, how can they reach out? How can they learn more?
Well, you know what? They can reach me on Facebook. I have my Success Mindset for Physician Leaders and Entrepreneurs. You can join that. Or you can go to leadphysician.org, which is my website, and I'm starting a whole new round of leading physicians with our expert physician leaders. So it's physician to physician starting in January, and there's a big sale going on before December 15th. But you can also email me at info@drelsieco.com.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. All of that information will be below this video in the show notes, and all the information that we've talked about and references will be down there as well. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know I ran over, but this was just too good to stop.
And Erica, I would love to interview you on my video podcast someday.
I would love it anytime. I would love it.
And before you announce this whole thing on LinkedIn too, I would love people to sign up for your conference. So.
Oh, thank you. I so appreciate that. And
I'm sure you can have a lot of people sign up.
We need to schedule like a full hour for whatever. 20, 30 minutes is not enough.
Okay. All right.
All right.
So good talking to you.
Thank you. Great talking to you too.